Hey, Archie, is it possible to own nothing and rent everything?
Oh, you bet, and it's happening. I'm Archie Hoxton.
And I'm Rob Hoxton.
And this is Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. Welcome back to the Last Paycheck Podcast, brought to you by Hoxton Planning and Management. We're your hosts, certified financial planning professionals, Archie Hoxton and Rob Hoxton. And today we're going to talk to you about a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal this morning, the morning of recording. And it was all about a subset of people who have stopped owning anything, basically, and they rent everything.
I think this is so
everything.
Cool. I think it is so cool. If you can imagine retiring and deciding that you've been nailed down to the same place your entire life and you just want complete freedom to go do and go visit anything or anyone you want, this would be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a crazy idea to me because, I mean, when we say owning everything, and these are people who really value flexibility and the flexibility you get from renting stuff. When I think of renting stuff, I think of like back in the day of renting a DVD for a weekend because you don't want to buy it, or, renting a car, leasing a car. People who really value that sort of short-term commitment, try it out first kind of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, they're renting all kinds of interesting things. Like in the article, it talks about this couple who rents their house. That's pretty typical. It's furnished, so they're renting the furnishings. They also rent their bed.
Yeah.
Which I suppose you do whenever you go to a motel or a hotel. They're renting their clothes. I don't even want to know. I know there are things like Rent the Runway that people have used for years, and there are other services as well.
Yeah.
But the rent the clothes thing is pretty fascinating to me. I mean, if you've watched this podcast long enough, you've noticed that I have a tendency to gain weight and lose weight and gain weight and lose weight. I think I need to start renting my clothes. Yeah. I would need like a quarter of the closet space.
Yeah.
If I didn't have Fat Rob, Medium Rob, Skinny Rob wardrobes. Anyway, so yeah. I'm loving this whole idea.
And I just tend to have a winter of discomfort in pants that are too tight, and then a summer of, needing a new belt to hold my pants up, because I tend to go back and forth between winter and summer. And so, yeah, I mean, being able to rent would be great. There's trade-offs with it, but I mean, being able to try something. How many times have you bought some item of clothing or anything for that matter, and it sits there for months or longer, you don't use it, and ultimately you get past the return date and you realize, well, that was a waste of money. I'm just going to, donate it or sell it to consignment or something like that.
Tools for me, I'll go to Home Depot or Lowe's or someplace, Ace Hardware. I love Ace Hardware. It kind of has this small town feel. And I'll see a circular saw and I'm like, well, I think I should probably have a circular saw. I mean, that's just something every guy ought to have in the toolbox. And I'll get it home and your mother will say, "What is that?" And I'll say, "It's a circular saw." And she says, "Well, we've been married for 35 years and I've never seen you use one before." And I said, "Well, I have a project that I'm going to work on, and so I thought I should have a circular saw. And anyway, stop bothering me. I wanted a circular saw. But I'd have been a lot better off if I just rented that thing."
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's so great because, I mean, that also, I know there's a whole social media, kind of joke about borrowing tools and who you should lend your tools to and who you shouldn't, but renting tools kind of fixes that, and renting anything. So the thing that I find really interesting about it, though, is this whole idea of being able to have more flexibility in, like, if you want to move. Because, I mean, moving is awful.
And expensive.
It's only because you have so much stuff. If all you had to do to move was get in your car, And
Which
you had to mail back stuff.
You might even be able to mail your car back too and just catch a flight to wherever you're going next.
Yeah. You could move once a year and it wouldn't be a problem. But if you have stuff, moving is one of the most stressful things that you can do in a given year. So I think that's actually pretty neat. But I have like reservations about the whole renting everything.
Well, we have clients that in the past have retired, and they've worked hard, they've raised families, they've been really active in their community, and they feel like there's a lot of the world that they would like to see.
Yeah.
And a lot of them start with the good old US of A, right? And so they get a big camper, or they get a boat and do the Great Loop, or a sailboat. And to my knowledge, every single one of them have actually bought these very expensive vehicles to go on these journeys. But imagine if you rented it instead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so they, maybe they'll spend a year out wandering the countryside and seeing all the sights. And then they'll come home and they'll think, well, let's do it again. And they never get around to doing it. And now they have this big vehicle, whether it be a boat or an RV, that's depreciated. So there's that cost. And now it's just kind of rusting in the back 40.
You still have to maintain it.
That seems like a great thing to do. Rent?
Yeah. I mean, I would say one of the best, like all-time best rental decisions that you can make would be like an RV or a camper. Like if you've got the fever for that sort of thing, and you want to take an RV trip or have a camper and travel around, even if it's just one time in the year, I would say rent it first. Do that trip. It'll cost a lot less than buying it. And then if you want to do it again and you make time to do it the next year, maybe then consider buying, because that way you've proven to yourself that it's not just a one-time bug, that this is a lifestyle decision you want to make, and it may actually cost less if you do it for 5 years in a row to buy it. But I think that's one of the best examples of like, you should rent this.
But there are some cases where renting is a heck of a lot more expensive. So as it was the case with this, one of the couples that was, interviewed in this Wall Street Journal article, which we'll provide the link for with the show notes, but is they decided that they would actually buy a car. So they had one car, and it was an older Subaru Outback that they paid $10,000 for. They also interviewed a guy who works at a car dealership, and he would lease cars. If you're the kind of person that drives a car for a long time, I'm not sure a lease is the greatest way to go. So that's an example of where it may not work very well.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of this actually, in a lot of these scenarios where you're renting, if you're going to have the item, and every item is different, right? I mean, if you're renting a sweater, or any clothing item, the period of time is shorter. Like if you're going to have it for a year, it might make sense, or 2 years, it might make sense to buy it. But like a car, that's maybe more like if you want a new car every 2 or 3 years, then leasing is probably cheaper. But if you're going to own the car for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, then buying probably makes more sense. So like, there's always this, how long and how little commitment do you feel comfortable making to an item, and are you going to turn it over all the time? Then renting actually can be great.
Well, the clothing rental programs, which I actually looked into a little bit because of my, tendency to have fat, medium, and skinny Rob wardrobes. Actually, in order to make that work, you have to be the kind of person that really enjoys getting new clothes.
Yeah.
One of the things I like least in the world is shopping for clothes. And so when you rent the clothes, typically the way it works is that if you haven't done it before, and some of you watching probably have, you go online, you pick out, a handful of items that you're going to wear for a while, usually a week, a month. They send it to you. You have a subscription fee. Maybe it's a $100 a month subscription fee. You wear that stuff as long as you want, and then you return it. And when you return it, you can replace it. It's like the old Netflix deal where you would get the movie in the mail, and you could keep it and watch it as long as you want, as many times as you want, but you couldn't get a new one until you returned it.
Right.
Same sort of thing, I think, with these clothing programs. The problem is you would not catch me sitting on the sofa figuring out what my wardrobe is going to look like for the next few weeks. Just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's the same with me, but I totally get, because there's also actually a problem right now that companies are facing with people buying things, trying them on, and returning them, to where there's a lot of waste. Getting these.
And by trying them on, you mean wearing them once and not getting any spaghetti sauce on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
then
it's
returning
really
it.
Okay, I don't like this, I'm going to return it. There's a ton of waste that happens from that. And so this is if you're someone who does that all the time, this actually might be a great way to avoid that, because you try things on. If you don't like it, well, you didn't really make a commitment to it. You can return it and get something else. And this company specializes in that, as opposed to, going to your favorite normal retailer and buying 10 items and keeping 3.
Yeah, they're going to catch on eventually and disown you as a customer. I would certainly think.
Yeah. But that's one scenario where I think it would make a lot of sense. So I think the key with this is balancing, as it is with many things, balancing different values. Like if you really value flexibility and newness and always having the ability to exchange things out and have a short-term ownership of an item.
And the freedom of not being owned by your possessions.
Right.
Yeah.
There's definitely some utility there.
But it comes at a cost. Renting is oftentimes more expensive than owning something for a very long time and wearing it or using it until it's worn out. But you know what else? When we were talking for the show, it occurred to us that if you're spending a little bit more money renting, and by doing that, you're avoiding buying stuff that then ends up in the attic or the garage and never gets used, that's a very expensive thing to do too.
It is.
So if you're renting things and you don't use them and you return them, that's most certainly less expensive than having bought it and then trying to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah. Well, on the flip side of that, if you're really disciplined about how you buy things and doing your research and going and trying stuff on, like every time, if I buy an item of clothing and I haven't tried it on, the chance that I'm not going to like it is pretty high. If I go try something on and I only buy things that I'm like, I really like this,
True.
I'll usually keep it. Because the thing I don't love about this is how little control you have over your monthly cash flow. As these rental companies raise their prices, your cost of using that goes up. And then if you decide to stop doing it, suddenly you've got to start buying stuff. And so buying and
you have
owning,
to buy everything.
Yeah. Buying and owning gives you a whole lot more control because you buy it once and you lock in the price today. And if you take good care of it and you buy something high quality, it can last a long time. You're not going to have to be exposed to the rising costs all throughout that time, and you can save. And so I think it gives you more control over your monthly cash flow. And that's why I like to buy things and just own them. I also don't like having to make constant decisions about what to do next. And I make a decision and I'm good with my wardrobe for, the next few years.
We'll consider this scenario. I get what you're saying, but take my story with golf. Terrible golfer. Ask any of my friends, they won't even invite me to play golf anymore. Well, there's one guy that does because he's a glutton for punishment, but I keep buying golf clubs because I'm erroneously think that that's actually going to help me play golf better. And so then I realized that club didn't actually help. So now I have an extra putter and it just sort of leans in the corner. If I could rent that, maybe there's a place that you can do that. If I could rent that club and use it until I realize that it doesn't really matter what kind of putter I have, I'm still going to be terrible, then I will have saved that money.
Oh, yeah. Especially if you don't golf very often and you just want the occasional opportunity to play golf without having to buy clubs. Mm-hmm. That can be great too. Yeah. So, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, that's a really interesting idea. I think renting everything and owning nothing, it's not for everybody, but it is a really cool idea.
Maybe somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. And I mean, it would involve a radical lifestyle change, and maybe selling everything that you have and switching to renting. You might end up finding that you get some extra money that you didn't expect to have. So could be an interesting idea for sure. So I think that's about all the time we have today, though. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Remember to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave us a comment with questions or thoughts. You can also, we've got our number on the screen. You can shoot us a text or give us a call if you got something really specific. And share it with your family and friends, and we hope to see you next time. You've been watching Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. If you like this show, be sure to hit like and subscribe. Last Paycheck is available anywhere you get your podcasts.